Frisco, Texas, in the Toyota Stadium takes place for the FCS National Championship between the North Dakota State Bison and the Montana State Bobcats, I think.
I think it's the Bobcats.
Bobcats, yep. Yes. I forgot for a second. My apologies, Montana State. Monday night kickoff at 7 p.m. on ESPN/ESPN Plus. This is going to be a great game for all the viewers. And Brad and I have really come to like the FCS. We've talked about it over the past 2 years, and it never gets old. I will say we missed out on the quarterfinals, the semifinals. We missed out on some of the games. Can you hear me? No? Did I mess up? As I was saying before we had technical difficulties, Brad and I really enjoy calling the FCS playoff games. I mean, this is something that the home field advantage really comes into play, especially when you get up in the North Mountains of North Dakota, and the Fargo Dome maybe be a little bit different being indoors, but you get up there in South Dakota, Montana. We love covering all of FCS football, and this game is no different for us. This is the national championship game played in Frisco, Texas. I believe it's outdoors. I believe it's played at the soccer stadium, if I'm not mistaken. Brad's confirming.
I think so.
I keep up with it a little bit. I'm down here in the sunny state of Florida, down here at the Orange Bowl, gearing up for Notre Dame versus Penn State. But before we get to that game, we're going to talk about the FCS championship game. So, Brad, without further ado, it's time to break the huddle. Let's get into this game. This is a really big matchup. 2025, like I said, FCS championship game versus between the 13-2 North Dakota State Bison and the Montana State Bobcats, 15-0. Let's start off with some of the key players for North Dakota State. We talk about Cam Miller. We know he's an efficient quarterback leading in a balanced offensive attack. Let's start there. What have you seen from Cam Ward this season, or Cam Miller, about the same type of player when you think about playing style, but Cam Miller for the North Dakota State Bison. What have you seen from him this season? What can we expect on Monday night from this guy?
Yeah, Nate. So my first glimpse of Cam Miller, and I'm sure I watched him at some point last year, but my first glimpse of him was opening night against Colorado, and he looked very poised in the pocket, has definitely got an ability to use his legs, but this is a guy that he just knows this system in and out. He's, looking at the stats, he's been a starter since 2021. So he's been on campus. He's got full command of this offense, full command of this team. He's accurate with the football. And Nate, a big thing is he doesn't turn the football over. Almost a 73% completion percentage. And then his touchdown to interception ratio every year is just incredible. But this year especially, 31 touchdowns to 4 picks. So this guy is smart with the football. He's got a good arm. But he just puts this offense in the best position to have success.
Yeah, and I think to your point, this is a very seasoned veteran in Cam Miller. We've seen a lot from this guy. You mentioned the Colorado game, but then you also look at their win against South Dakota State, a very prominent program, 28-21. Put up some big numbers in that game. Then you fast forward to the month of November, playing Montana State, another very prominent program in the FCS that we've kept up with in recent years. They beat them 59-21. So, this North Dakota State Bison, although they have 2 losses, one to South Dakota and a 1-point loss, very tightly contested matchup there. We know that Montana State beat South Dakota. We'll get into Montana State here in a minute. But, yeah, the offense has run very efficiently, I think I don't want to say he's a pro-style quarterback, but he definitely shows flashes of being a pro-style guy. He's a commander. He's a leader. Like, he knows how to run the offense, and he's very confident in that. I think you're going to see that on Monday night. Now, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball, Brad. I'm going to throw you a little bit of curveball here, so I'll help you a little bit. But let's talk about their defensive tackle, Eli Mostaert. This guy has been a disruptive force on the defensive line, contributing significantly to that stout defensive front for the Bison. And Brad, when you look at his stats, 30 solo tackles and 7 sacks on the season. That's pretty incredible. His senior veteran leader as well, 6'3", 289. Tell me a little bit more, not just about, Eli, but just about this defensive front for North Dakota State. What do they bring in this game?
Yeah, Nate, and I'm so glad that you brought this up because, look, football at any level, look, I mean, we can talk about skill positions or whatever, but really, football, it comes down to winning, on the line of scrimmage. And North Dakota State, for the years that I've been following them and keeping up, especially in the Matt Inch years, they had a very, very good defensive front seven. And this doesn't change. You mentioned the talented defensive tackle
Eli Mostaert, yeah.
Mostaert, I believe. But Rokes, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, the senior defensive end, he's got 4 sacks. They got some other guys, but they do a really good job of just, breaking down that pocket. And, and if they have to send a linebacker, they will. But they do just a really good job, Nate. 37 sacks as a team, and I think that's key. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but this Montana State team, Nate, like I said, not going to jump too far ahead because we're going to talk about them. They got weapons. So to me, it's very, very important that North Dakota State controls this game on the defensive side with their front four and not having to bring extra guys, because if they do, this Montana State team is going to pick out those weaknesses and they're going to exploit that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition. You talk about the coordinated attacks, as I like to say, on the defensive front. You talk about the defensive end, talk about defensive tackle and Eli Mostaert. Those guys have been great all season at the point of attack. Now we're going to turn over to the 15-0 Bobcats of Montana State, and we're going to start right up front with their leader, Tommy Mellott. Mellott, I think is how you pronounce it. A very dynamic guy, dual threat quarterback, instrumental in both passing and rushing attack. What kind of challenge, Brad, does he give this Bison front?
Nate, I got to tell you, man, as we've talked about FCS here a little bit during the year, Montana State's a team that we really didn't talk about much, and I wish we would have, because, this guy, Tommy Mellott, he's it looks like, he's definitely started some games before this year, but, 22 and 23, threw for over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns both those years. And I hate to say that he came from nowhere, but in a way this year he did. I mean, 29 touchdowns to 2 picks. He's thrown for almost 2,600 yards. He's got a 69%, completion percentage. This guy has just, come from nowhere. 2022, he did rush for 1,000 yards. It looks like it, and Montana State fans would love to hear, from y'all in the comments, giving us a little insight, because it seems like this guy has been, kind of a, I don't know if he played running back some, or, if he came in just as a wildcat quarterback, but this guy's got impressive rushing stats, ran for 1,000, as I mentioned there in 2022, but, this year, 900 yards by himself. He's got a long of 76 and 14 touchdowns. So he is a true dual threat weapon. And we just mentioned that North Dakota State, front four, front seven, those guys are going to be important in containing Tommy, because if he gets loose, that's bad news for the Bison.
Yeah, and you mentioned his rushing attack. I mean, you turn on the tape right away. This guy is fast. I mean, he looks like a running back on film. And I think that's going to play a part in this one. They're going to have to add an extra guy in the box to keep this guy maybe in a spy formation.
Yeah,
they're really going to have to bring people up front to defend the run, whether it's him or who the guy we're going to talk about next. But one thing I want to mention too is, this biggest thing that stood out to me with both Cam Miller and Tommy Mellott, they don't turn the ball over much. No. I mean, Tom, I think Cam Miller has 4 interceptions on the year, and Tommy has only 2. So, I mean, it's kind of a pick your poison with both of these guys, right? Do you defend the run, or do you kind of force them in a situation to make some throws on you? And I think both of them have the capability to make throws on you. And that leads into our next guy, running back, I want to pronounce this right, Scottre Humphrey, I believe, nation's leading rushing offense, averaging 6.59 yards per carry. What are your thoughts on the rushing attack of Montana State, Brad? And this could play a significant role in this game as well against North Dakota State.
Absolutely, Nate. Well, you mentioned Humphrey, 1,300 yards on the year. He's got 15 touchdowns.
That's crazy.
And then his backup, Adam Jones, has got 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns. And then we mentioned Mellott. I mean, Nate, they have got a true 1-2-3 punch. And Nate, I did want to make this point, and I'm not trying to jump into 2025 already, but Nate, Humphrey is a sophomore. Jones is a true freshman. And I know they're losing Mellott, but Montana State fans, I bet y'all are super excited, because you got at least one more year with these guys, breaking in a new start quarterback, obviously next year. But Nate, what stands out to me, man, this rushing attack, already 2 1,000-yard rushers. Mellott has a chance to be the third one. And those two, these three guys that combined for, almost 45, 40-plus touchdowns between the three of them on the ground. I mean, this offense is very, very high-powered. It's very, very fun. It's going to put a lot of strain on that defense and that defensive staff for North Dakota State.
Yeah, Brad, not to jump too far off topic, but they got 3 freshman quarterbacks standing behind them and 1 sophomore guy and Jordan Reed. I think he could be the next guy up from El Centro, California. Although he only has 4 yards on the season, this is a big-bodied kid, 6'6", 228. So, I mean, they've got some quarterbacks in the waiting ready to step up, big-bodied kids, 3 of freshmen, all from Montana themselves. Mellott, another hometown kid as well. So, I mean, this is going to be an exciting matchup, and I think the Montana State Bobcats have a lot to look forward to even past this game on Monday night, which will be tomorrow night. When we look at their statistical comparisons, you look at the Montana State offense, Brad, they're averaging 41 points a game, leading the FCS with a 54.35% success rate, and they're averaging 301 rushing yards per game. Then you look at North Dakota State, and they're averaging 6.3 yards per play with a strong rushing attack, efficient passing game. Let's turn it over to the defense. Montana State only allows 5.04 yards per play with a defensive success rate of 34.92%. North Dakota State, very similar, only allowing 5.4 yards per game with a defensive success rate of 39.42%. Now, we talked about Montana State being favored by 3.5 on some board, 55.5 point over-under on this game. We know that North Dakota State leads the all-time series 5-1 against Montana State, but this year could prove differently with Montana State trying to remain undefeated, going 16-0, including a 38-10 victory in the 2021 championship game. That is North Dakota State taking that game. The last time the Bobcats won against the Bison was 2005. Now, Brad, I want to turn it back to you for your prediction. With all this information that we've gathered, who are you going to take in this FCS National Championship game?
Look, I really respect North Dakota State. They've got a great program. It's a program built on physicality, built on winning the line of scrimmage, having a balanced offense and attacking on defense. Nate, and just a quick side note before I give you my prediction, I hope this is a team that is looking to maybe make the jump to FBS. I would love to see them in the revamped Pac-12. I think they really, really would make a good transition. I think they would have a chance to be successful. Saying all that, I'm picking the Bobcats in this one. I just think they've got too much firepower on offense. I think, and I'm going to be honest, for as much publicity as their offense gets, they got a really good defense. And I ultimately think we're looking at potentially a little bit of a shootout. And I don't know the over-under on this one, but
55.5.
Okay, 55.5. I could see that. I think we're gonna, both these teams are easily gonna score in the 20s, but I think ultimately just Montana State with that, that really, really three-headed monster on the rushing attack, I think is just a little bit too much for Cam Miller and North Dakota State to keep up with.
Yeah, Brad, I think this is a game that comes down to who can control the line of scrimmage. As much as we talk about the passing attack of Mellott and Miller, the double M's in this game, as I like to say, kind of ironic. But I think this really does come down to the rushing attack and the physicality up front. Who's going to be the more physical team? This is going to be an outdoor game. And I don't know. I'll have to look real quick. I didn't look at the weather. The forecast projection
right now, Nate, it's showing going to be chilly in Texas, showing 32 degrees but clear at kickoff, but still going to be cold. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and both of these teams are used to playing in cold
Absolutely.
weather, regardless of North Dakota State being in a dome. They have to play on the road, obviously, so they're used to this day in and day out. Not saying that's going to play into this game. I don't know what the wind is going to be in this game too. It could get pretty windy out there in Frisco. But I think I'm going to take the Montana State Bobcats as well. I think this is a very physical front team. And we talk about the elite athleticism of this quarterback and of the running back. I also want to mention a guy real quick too. I want to give him a shout out while we have a chance, if I can get back to it real quick. The wide receiver for Montana State, there it is, T. Dowler, Taco Dowler. What a name. Wow. 5'9", 175 pounds. But, Brad, this guy's had 35 receptions, 546 yards, and 10 touchdowns. He's averaging 15.6 yards a catch. Again, I talk about the run game up front, but you got to think that's going to play a part in this too. I think Montana State they just outmatched North Dakota State in this one. I think it's a close game. Obviously, Vegas knows 3-point spread. It's going to be close, but give me the Montana State Bobcats in a close one come Monday night in the FCS championship game. Let us know down in the comments who you think comes out on top to win the FCS championship game in Frisco. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle.